Alexandra Carter stood at the front of her seventh-grade classroom at Pine Ridge Middle School in Copper Falls, Montana, writing vocabulary words on the whiteboard. At 38 years old, with her auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun and reading glasses perched on her nose, she looked like exactly what she was supposed to be, a quiet English teacher in a small mountain town. "Remember," she told her students, "your essays on courage are due Friday. I want you to think deeply about what real courage means. It's not always loud or obvious." 12-year-old Emma Rodriguez raised her hand. "Ms. Carter, have you ever done something really brave?" Alex smiled gently. "I think we all have moments of courage, Emma. Sometimes it's standing up for someone who's being bullied. Sometimes it's admitting when you're wrong. Courage comes in many forms." It was a careful answer, a teacher's answer. It revealed nothing about the woman she used to be. The bell rang and the students gathered their belongings. As they filed out, Emma lingered at Alex's desk. "Ms. Carter, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "There's a boy who keeps bothering me, Tyler Jenkins. He follows me home sometimes and says mean things. I told Mr. Brennan, but he said I should just ignore it." Alex felt a familiar protective instinct kick in, but she kept her voice calm. "Have you told your parents?" "My mom works 2 jobs. She's always tired. I don't want to worry her." "Emma, if someone is making you feel unsafe, that's serious. I'll talk to Mr. Brennan myself." After Emma left, Alex sat at her desk for a moment, thinking. Dennis Brennan was the vice principal, a former college football player who ran the school like a locker room. He had made his opinion of Alex clear from her first day 2 years ago. "We need teachers who can handle discipline," he had said, looking at her small frame skeptically. "These kids need strong authority figures, not softness." Alex had simply smiled and said she would do her best. She had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting with words. She found Brennan in his office, feet up on his desk, watching sports highlights on his computer. "Mr. Brennan, I need to talk to you about Emma Rodriguez." He barely looked up. "What about her?" "She says a male student has been following her home and harassing her. She reported it to you, and you told her to ignore it." Brennan waved his hand dismissively. "Kids have crushes. Tyler's just being a boy. Girls need to learn how to handle a little attention." Alex felt her jaw tighten. "Following someone home isn't attention, it's intimidation. We need to address this." Brennan finally looked at her, irritation crossing his face. "Ms. Carter, with all due respect, you teach English. I handle discipline. I've been in education for 15 years. I know how to deal with kids. And I'm telling you that a student feels unsafe. That requires action." "What do you want me to do? Suspend a kid for talking to a girl?" Brennan stood up, using his considerable height advantage to loom over her. "Look, I get that you're concerned, but you need to understand how things work in the real world. Kids are tougher than you think. Emma will be fine." Alex held her ground, looking up at him without flinching. "And if she's not fine, if this escalates, then I'll handle it, but I'm not going to ruin a boy's record because a girl can't handle a little teasing." He moved toward the door, clearly ending the conversation. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual problems to deal with." Alex left his office, her frustration carefully controlled. She had seen men like Brennan before, men who believed their size and authority made them right, who dismissed concerns they didn't understand. In her previous life, she would have handled things differently, but that life was over. Alex had joined the Navy at 18, desperate to escape a small town where everyone knew her as the girl whose father drank too much and whose mother had abandoned the family. The military had given her structure, purpose, and a new identity. She had excelled. After 5 years as a hospital corpsman, she had been selected for basic underwater demolition SEAL training, one of the first women allowed to attempt the program after the combat exclusion policy was lifted. She had made it through Hell Week. She had graduated. She had served 6 years as a Navy SEAL, conducting operations in places she could never talk about, doing things she tried not to remember. And then, on a mission in Syria, everything had changed. Alex pushed the memories away as she walked back to her classroom. That was then, this was now. She was a teacher. She helped students with grammar and essay structure. She coached the girls' soccer team. She lived a quiet, peaceful life. She had chosen this. She had needed this. That afternoon, as Alex was erasing the whiteboard after her last class, Principal Dorothy Harrison appeared in the doorway. "Alex, do you have a moment?" Dorothy was in her early 60s, a veteran educator with kind eyes and a reputation for actually listening to her staff. Alex liked her. "Of course." Dorothy closed the door and sat down. "Dennis told me about your conversation, about Emma Rodriguez." Alex chose her words carefully. "I'm concerned about her safety." "I understand, but Dennis feels you're overreacting. He says boys will be boys, and we can't turn every teenage interaction into a crisis." "With respect, Principal Harrison, that's exactly the attitude that allows harassment to escalate into something worse." Dorothy sighed. "I agree with you, personally, but I also have to work with Dennis, and he's very traditional in his views. He sees discipline as his territory. Even when a student reports feeling unsafe. I'll talk to him, I'll make sure he speaks to Tyler Jenkins. But Alex," Dorothy paused, "you're an excellent teacher, your students love you, but you need to pick your battles. Dennis has been here much longer than you, and he has the superintendent's ear. I don't want you making an enemy of him over something that might just be teenage drama." Alex felt the familiar frustration of being dismissed, of having her concerns minimized because she was quiet, because she was small, because she was a woman in a world that valued loudness and size. "I understand," she said, knowing that arguing further would accomplish nothing. After Dorothy left, Alex gathered her things and headed to the parking lot. The October sun was already setting behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the school grounds. She was unlocking her truck when she noticed a man leaning against a car 3 spaces down. He was watching her. When their eyes met, he smiled, not friendly, something else. Alex's training kicked in automatically. She cataloged details without seeming to look directly at him. Mid-40s, 6 feet tall, athletic build, tattoo on his left forearm partially visible under his jacket sleeve. The way he stood suggested military or law enforcement training. "Alexandra Carter," he called out. Every muscle in Alex's body tensed. No one here called her Alexandra. She was Ms. Carter or just Alex. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice calm, her hand casually reaching into her bag where she kept a tactical pen. Not a weapon, not officially, but effective if needed. The man pushed off from the car and started walking toward her, not aggressive but purposeful. "I think we need to talk." "About what?" "About who you really are." He stopped about 10 feet away, maintaining distance. "Smart. See, I was doing some research on the new teachers in town, routine background stuff, and I found something interesting about you. Well, actually, I found almost nothing about you before 2 years ago, and that got me curious." Alex's mind raced. "I don't know what you're talking about. I have a teaching degree from the University of Montana. I've been teaching here for 2 years. If you have concerns, you can speak to Principal Harrison." "See, that's all true, but it's also very neat, very clean, almost like a cover story." He smiled again. "I used to be a contractor overseas. I know what a sanitized background looks like." "I think you should leave." "Oh, I will, but first I wanted to introduce myself. Frank Holloway, I'm Tyler Jenkins's father." The name made Alex's stomach sink. Emma's harasser. "I heard you've been making trouble for my son," Holloway continued. "Trying to get him in trouble for being friendly with a girl. That doesn't sit well with me. I raised a concern about a student's safety. That's part of my job." "Your job is to teach English, not to stick your nose into things that don't concern you." Holloway's smile faded. "I know Dennis Brennan. We play poker together. He's a good guy, understands how things really work, unlike you. Mr. Holloway, if you have a complaint, you can file it through proper channels. But right now, you're making me uncomfortable. I'm going to ask you to leave." "Or what?" Holloway took a step closer. "You'll call security. This is a small town, Ms. Carter. We take care of our own, and we don't like outsiders causing problems." Alex's hand tightened on the tactical pen in her bag. She could drop him in 3 seconds. One strike to the solar plexus, sweep the legs, control position. Easy. But she couldn't. That wasn't who she was anymore. "Goodbye, Mr. Holloway." Alex got into her truck and locked the doors. Holloway watched her for a moment, then laughed and walked back to his car. As Alex drove home, her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of restraint. She had wanted to respond the way she was trained. Instead, she had walked away. That night in her small rental house on the edge of town, Alex stood in her basement looking at the locked cabinet she hadn't opened in 2 years. Inside were her sealed trident, her medals, photographs from her military life, and the gear she had promised herself she would never need again. She thought about Emma Rodriguez, scared and dismissed. She thought about Frank Holloway's threats. She thought about Dennis Brennan's condescension and Dorothy Harrison's political caution. And she thought about the mission in Syria that had ended her SEAL career, the mission where she had saved her team but lost something essential in the process. The mission that had convinced her that violence, even justified violence, came with a cost she could no longer pay. Alex locked the cabinet and went upstairs. She had chosen this life. She had chosen peace. She had chosen to help students with words and education, not with the skills that had once defined her. But as she lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was building, that the careful, quiet life she had constructed was about to be tested. And she wondered if she would be strong enough to maintain her vow of peace when the violence inevitably came. The next morning, Alex arrived at school early, as usual. She liked the quiet before students arrived, the calm before the controlled chaos of the school day. She was preparing her lesson plans when Principal Harrison appeared at her door, her face troubled. "Alex Tyler Jenkins's father filed a formal complaint against you." Alex looked up. "For what?" "Harassment. He claims you've been targeting his son and making false accusations. He's demanding a formal investigation and wants you suspended pending the outcome." Alex felt the familiar frustration building. "Principal Harrison, I raised a legitimate concern about a student's safety. That's not harassment." "I know, and I don't agree with the complaint, but Frank Holloway is connected in this town. His brother-in-law is on the school board. I have to take this seriously." Dorothy sat down heavily. "I'm not suspending you, but I need you to keep a low profile for a few days while I sort this out. No more direct involvement with the Emma Rodriguez situation. Can you do that?" Alex wanted to argue. She wanted to fight. But she had learned in the military that sometimes the best strategy was tactical retreat. "Yes, ma'am." After Dorothy left, Alex sat in silence. This was how predators won, by using systems and connections and intimidation, by making victims feel like they couldn't speak up, by punishing anyone who tried to help. She had seen it overseas, warlords and corrupt officials who maintained power through fear and influence. And she was seeing it here, in a small Montana town, in the hallways of a middle school. The day passed slowly. Alex taught her classes, graded papers, and tried to focus on the routine. But she noticed Emma Rodriguez watching her with worried eyes. She noticed Tyler Jenkins smirking in the hallway, emboldened by his father's actions. After school, as Alex was packing up, Emma appeared at her door. "Ms. Carter, I'm sorry. My mom told me that Tyler's dad complained about you. This is my fault." Alex set down her bag and gave Emma her full attention. "This is not your fault. Never apologize for asking for help when you feel unsafe. But now you're in trouble because of me." "I'm not in trouble, and even if I were, standing up for what's right is always worth it." Alex paused. "Emma, has Tyler bothered you again?" Emma looked down at her feet. "He cornered me in the stairwell yesterday. He said his dad was going to get you fired and then no one would help me. He said I should be nicer to him." Red flags exploded in Alex's mind. This was escalating. "Did he touch you?" "No, but he got really close. I was scared." "I want you to tell your mother everything, tonight. And I want you to document every interaction with Tyler, time, place, what he said, who else was there. Can you do that?" Emma nodded. "Are you really going to get fired?" "No, sweetheart, I'm not." Alex squeezed Emma's shoulder gently. "And I'm not going to stop making sure you're safe, I promise." After Emma left, Alex sat at her desk thinking. She needed to approach this strategically. Document everything, build a case, work through official channels. But she also needed to be realistic. Frank Holloway had power and connections. Dennis Brennan was on his side. The system was rigged against Emma and against anyone who tried to help her. Alex was gathering her things when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop causing problems or you'll regret it." Alex stared at the message. Technically, it could be considered a threat. She could report it to the police. But in a small town where Frank Holloway probably knew every cop personally, what good would that do? She deleted the message and drove home. That evening, Alex went for a run in the mountains, 5 miles up steep trails, pushing herself until her lungs burned and her legs ached. It was her meditation, her therapy, the way she processed stress. She had just finished stretching on her front porch when a truck pulled up. Frank Holloway got out, along with another man Alex didn't recognize. "Ms. Carter," Holloway called out, walking onto her property without invitation. "We need to talk." Alex stood up slowly, every sense heightened. "This is private property, Mr. Holloway. You need to leave." "We'll leave when we're done talking." Holloway gestured to his companion. "This is my brother-in-law, Dale Pearson. He's on the school board. We wanted to deliver a message personally." Pearson stepped forward. He was bigger than Holloway, with the build of someone who spent a lot of time in the gym. "Ms. Carter, you're new here. Maybe you don't understand how things work. We're a close community. We protect our families. And when outsiders come in and start causing trouble, we handle it." Alex kept her voice calm. "I haven't caused any trouble. I reported a student's safety concern. That's my job." "Your job is to do what you're told," Pearson said. "And right now you're being told to back off. Drop this ridiculous harassment claim against Tyler. Apologize for wasting everyone's time, and maybe you get to keep your job." "And if I don't?" Holloway smiled. "Then things get difficult for you. Small towns can be tough on people who don't fit in. Accidents happen. Houses get broken into. People find themselves unwelcome everywhere they go." Alex felt the familiar cold calm settle over her. The same state of mind she had entered before missions, when emotions became a liability and only tactical thinking mattered. "You're threatening me," she said quietly. "We're giving you friendly advice," Pearson replied. "Take it or don't, but if you're smart, you'll do what's best for everyone and find another place to teach." They turned to leave. Holloway paused at his truck. "Oh, and Ms. Carter, I looked into your background, or tried to. It's interesting how little information there is about you before 2 years ago. Makes me wonder what you're hiding. Maybe I should dig deeper." After they drove away, Alex stood on her porch for a long time, controlling her breathing, forcing herself to stay calm. They were escalating, threats at school, threats at her home. And now they were digging into her background. If they dug deep enough, if they had the right connections, they might find something. Her military service wasn't classified. She was officially a retired Navy veteran. But her SEAL service was more complicated. The Navy had worked hard to protect the identities of the first female SEALs, especially those who had conducted sensitive operations. Alex's service records were sanitized. Most of her missions were classified. But if someone looked hard enough, knew where to look, they could find traces. Alex went inside and locked the door. She pulled out her laptop and began documenting everything, every conversation, every threat, every interaction. She took screenshots of the text message before she had deleted it. She wrote down exactly what Holloway and Pearson had said. Then she did something she hadn't done in 2 years. She opened her encrypted email and sent a message to Commander Sarah Mitchell, her former commanding officer. "Sarah, I may have a situation. Civilians digging into my background. Need to know if my cover is secure. Also may need legal support. Will explain more if needed." The response came 30 minutes later. "Your records are solid, but if someone has the right contacts in DOD, they might find flags. What's going on, Alex? Are you in danger?" Alex stared at the question. Was she in danger? Probably not immediate physical danger, but her carefully constructed peaceful life was definitely under threat. She typed, "Just some small-town politics. I can handle it, but I needed to know my exposure level." Sarah's response was immediate. "Alex, you left for a reason. You wanted out of the violence. Don't let civilian assholes pull you back into that world. But if you need me, I'm one phone call away, and I can have a legal team there in 24 hours. "Thank you, I'll keep you posted." Alex closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of her living room. She had left the SEALs because she was tired of violence, tired of solving problems with force, tired of the moral weight of taking lives, even when justified. She had wanted to help people in a different way, to build up instead of tear down, to teach and nurture instead of destroy. But now she was facing a different kind of threat. Not insurgents or terrorists, but bullies in suits who used power and connections instead of weapons. And she was beginning to realize that her vow of nonviolence might not be enough to protect the people who needed her. The next day at school, Alex noticed the change immediately. Teachers who had been friendly were now distant. Dennis Brennan smirked when he saw her in the hallway, Even some students seemed to be avoiding her. Small-town rumor mill. Holloway and Pearson had been busy spreading their version of the story. At lunch, Alex sat alone in her classroom, grabbing papers. Dorothy Harrison appeared at her door. "Alex, the school board has scheduled a meeting for tomorrow night. They want to discuss the complaint against you. You'll have an opportunity to defend yourself, but I have to warn you, Dale Pearson is pushing hard for your termination." "Based on what? I haven't done anything wrong." "Based on the claim that you're creating a hostile environment and making false accusations against a student." Dorothy looked genuinely pained. "I'm fighting for you, Alex, but I need you to understand the politics here. The Pearson family has lived in this town for 4 generations. Frank Holloway's construction company employs half the parents of our students. They have power." "And Emma Rodriguez, what about her power? What about her safety?" "I've arranged for the school counselor to meet with Emma and her mother. We're documenting the situation. But Alex, you need to be prepared for the possibility that this doesn't go your way." After Dorothy left, Alex sat in the quiet classroom, thinking about courage, the subject she had asked her students to write about. Real courage, she had told them, wasn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes courage was standing up when it would be easier to sit down. Sometimes courage was protecting someone weaker, even at great personal cost. And sometimes courage meant knowing when to fight and when to walk away. Alex had walked away from the SEALs. She had chosen peace. But she was beginning to understand that peace wasn't the same as submission. And protecting the innocent, whether from terrorists overseas or bullies at home, might require her to use skills she had hoped to leave behind. That evening, Alex opened the locked cabinet in her basement. She looked at her sealed trident, at the medals she had earned, at the photographs of the warrior she used to be. And she made a decision. She wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to be intimidated. She wasn't going to abandon Emma Rodriguez to predators who used power instead of weapons. But she also wasn't going to become the person she used to be, someone who solved problems with violence. There had to be a third way, a way to fight without becoming what she had walked away from. Alex just had to find it before the school board meeting tomorrow night. Before Frank Holloway's threats escalated. Before Emma got hurt. The clock was ticking. The school board meeting was scheduled for 7 o'clock Thursday evening in the high school auditorium. Alex spent the day preparing her defense, gathering documentation, and trying to focus on teaching while her future hung in the balance. At 3 o'clock, as students were filing out for the day, Emma Rodriguez appeared at Alex's door. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. "Ms. Carter, I need to tell you something." Alex immediately closed the door and guided Emma to a chair. "What happened?" "Tyler cornered me again after 5th period. He pushed me against the lockers and—" Emma's voice broke. "He put his hand under my shirt. I pushed him away and ran, but Ms. Carter, I'm so scared." Alex felt white-hot rage flash through her, followed immediately by ice-cold tactical thinking. Did anyone see this? "I don't know, maybe. It was in the north stairwell." "Emma, I need you to listen carefully. This is sexual assault. We need to report this to the police immediately, and I need you to tell your mother right now." "But Tyler's dad—" "Tyler's dad doesn't get to protect his son from consequences, not for this." Alex pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Principal Harrison. We're doing this by the book, and we're doing it right now." What happened next moved quickly. Dorothy Harrison arrived, her face grim. She called Emma's mother and contacted the school resource officer, a local police officer assigned to the school. The resource officer was a middle-aged man named Dan Fletcher. Alex had met him a few times in passing. He seemed decent enough, but as he took Emma's statement, Alex noticed his discomfort. "Ms. Rodriguez, you understand this is a serious accusation," Fletcher said. "Are you certain about what happened?" "I'm certain," Emma said, her voice shaking but firm. "And you didn't do anything to encourage this behavior." Alex stepped forward. "Officer Fletcher, she's 12 years old. There is no behavior that would justify sexual assault." Fletcher looked at her with thinly veiled annoyance. "Ms. Carter, I'm conducting an investigation. I need to ask these questions." "Then ask questions that focus on the perpetrator's actions, not the victim's clothing or behavior." "I know how to do my job." "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you're trying to find a reason not to pursue this." Dorothy stepped between them. "Let's all take a breath. Officer Fletcher, what happens next?" Fletcher closed his notebook. "I'll need to speak with Tyler Jenkins and get his side of the story. Then I'll file a report with the detective division. They'll determine if charges are warranted." "That's it?" Alex couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "A student was sexually assaulted on school property, and you're just going to ask the perpetrator if he did it?" "Ms. Carter, I suggest you let me do my job before you make accusations you can't back up." Fletcher's tone hardened. "I know Frank Holloway. He's a good man. His son is a good kid. I'm not going to ruin a boy's life without a thorough investigation." After Fletcher left, Dorothy pulled Alex aside. "You need to control yourself. I understand you're upset, but antagonizing the police isn't going to help Emma." "He's not going to help Emma," Alex said quietly. "He's friends with Frank Holloway. He's already decided how this is going to go." "You don't know that." "I know exactly that. I've seen this playbook before." Alex took a breath, forcing herself to calm down. "What can we do to protect Emma?" "I'm suspending Tyler pending the investigation. I'm also recommending that Emma stay home for a few days while we sort this out, for her safety." "So Emma gets punished while Tyler's father hires lawyers and calls in favors." Dorothy's expression showed she agreed but couldn't say so. "The board meeting is in 4 hours. Right now, I need to deal with this new situation. Alex, I'm going to be honest. This makes your position even more precarious. Holloway is going to claim you coached Emma to make false accusations to retaliate for his complaint." "That's ridiculous." "That doesn't mean it won't work." After everyone left, Alex sat alone in her classroom, thinking. The system was failing Emma. The same system that was supposed to protect students was instead protecting the powerful and the connected. Alex had seen this before, in war zones where corrupt officials let perpetrators go free because of family connections or bribes. She had been helpless then, bound by rules of engagement, by diplomatic considerations, by orders that put politics above justice. But she wasn't in a war zone now. She was a civilian. And while she couldn't use the tactics that had once defined her, maybe she could use the strategic thinking. Alex began making phone calls. First, to an attorney she had researched, a women's rights lawyer in Missoula who specialized in sexual assault cases. The attorney agreed to take Emma's case pro bono if Emma's mother wanted representation. Second, to a journalist at the Montana Standard, a regional newspaper. The journalist was very interested in a story about a school board member trying to intimidate a teacher who had reported his nephew's sexual assault. Third, to her former commanding officer, Sarah Mitchell. "Sarah, I need a favor. I need information on Frank Holloway and Dale Pearson. Military records, if they have them, criminal history, anything that might give me leverage." "Alex, what are you getting into?" "I'm protecting a student. The local power structure is trying to bury a sexual assault case. I need ammunition." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I can have information to you in 3 hours, but Alex, be careful. You're a civilian now. You don't have the military backing you up anymore." "I know, but I can't walk away from this." "I know you can't. That's what made you a great SEAL. Just don't let your need to protect put you in a position where you compromise everything you've built." At 6:30, Alex drove to the high school for the board meeting. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sarah, a complete background check on both Holloway and Pearson. Frank Holloway had a sealed juvenile record, 2 DUI arrests in his 20s, both dismissed. A history of complaints from employees about harassment and intimidation, none resulting in charges. Dale Pearson was more interesting. He had served 4 years in the Army, discharged under other than honorable conditions, following an investigation into assault. The details were redacted, but the implication was clear. Alex also found something else, a pending civil lawsuit against Holloway's construction company for unsafe working conditions that had resulted in a worker's death. The case was being quietly settled to avoid publicity. She forwarded all of it to the journalist at the Montana Standard. The auditorium was half full when Alex arrived. She recognized parents, teachers, and several town officials. Frank Holloway sat in the front row, looking confident. Dale Pearson was on the raised platform with the other board members. Dorothy Harrison gave Alex an encouraging nod. Dennis Brennan smirked. The meeting was called to order. After routine business, Pearson introduced the complaint against Alex. Ms. Carter has been accused of harassment and creating a hostile environment, he began. She has targeted a student without cause, made false accusations, and created disruption in our school. I move that we terminate her employment effective immediately. Another board member, an older woman named Helen Martinez, raised her hand. Don't we need to hear from Ms. Carter first? And shouldn't there be an investigation before we make such a drastic decision? The investigation is clear, Pearson said. Ms. Carter has demonstrated poor judgment and has shown she's not fit to teach in our district. Alex stood up. May I speak? Pearson looked annoyed but couldn't refuse. You have 5 minutes. Alex walked to the front, her heart pounding but her voice steady. 2 weeks ago, a student came to me and reported that she felt unsafe. A male student was following her, intimidating her, and making unwanted advances. I reported this to Vice Principal Brennan, who dismissed the concern. I then raised it with Principal Harrison, who promised to investigate. That's a lie. Holloway started to stand, but Pearson gestured for him to sit down. 3 days ago, the male student cornered the female student and sexually assaulted her on school property. She has filed a police report. This happened today. Alex paused, looking directly at Pearson. So the question isn't whether I showed poor judgment by reporting a student's safety concern. The question is why the adults in positions of authority failed to take that concern seriously until it escalated to sexual assault. The murmuring in the auditorium grew louder. Several parents looked shocked. That's a serious accusation, Helen Martinez said. Do we have documentation of this assault? There's a police report, Dorothy Harrison confirmed, filed this afternoon. Pearson's face had gone red. This is clearly a retaliatory false accusation. Ms. Carter coached the student to lie to save her own job. I did no such thing, Alex said calmly. But I understand why you would make that accusation, Mr. Pearson. It's the same tactic your brother-in-law, Mr. Holloway, used when he sent threatening text messages to my phone and showed up at my house with you to intimidate me into silence. The room exploded with noise. Holloway jumped to his feet. That's a damn lie. I have the text message saved, Alex said. And I have witnesses who saw your truck at my house. I also have documentation of every interaction, every threat, and every attempt to intimidate me into not protecting a student. Pearson banged his gavel. This is out of order, Ms. Carter, you're making wild accusations. Are you denying that you went to her house? Helen Martinez interrupted. Because if you threatened a teacher, Dale, that's grounds for removal from this board. Before Pearson could respond, the auditorium doors opened. Officer Fletcher walked in, followed by 2 people in suits that Alex recognized as detectives from the county sheriff's office. Fletcher walked up to Frank Holloway. Mr. Holloway, we need you to come with us. We have some questions about your son's activities. This is harassment, Holloway shouted. I know my rights. I'm calling my lawyer. That's your right, sir, but you're still coming with us. As Fletcher escorted Holloway out, one of the detectives approached the board. We've received information about possible intimidation of a witness in an ongoing investigation. We'll need to speak with Mr. Pearson as well. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Parents were shouting questions, board members were arguing. Dorothy Harrison was trying to restore order. Alex quietly slipped out of the auditorium and walked to her truck. She sat in the parking lot for a long moment, her hands shaking slightly, not from fear but from adrenaline. She had won this round. She had used information, strategy, and the system itself to protect Emma and defend herself. She hadn't thrown a punch, hadn't used her SEAL training for violence, had solved the problem the way a teacher should, with intelligence and documentation and the truth. Her phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. Saw the news wire, small-town corruption scandal breaking in Montana. That wouldn't be you, would it? Alex smiled and typed back, just protecting a student the way I should. But as she drove home, Alex knew this wasn't over. She had made powerful enemies. Frank Holloway and Dale Pearson wouldn't just disappear because of one investigation. And she was right. The real confrontation was still coming. The story broke in the Montana Standard the next morning. School board member and brother-in-law accused of intimidating teacher who reported student assault. The article detailed the timeline of events, the threats against Alex, and the failure of school administration to protect Emma Rodriguez. By noon, the story had been picked up by regional news outlets. By evening, it was national news, a perfect storm of small-town corruption, sexual assault, and the intimidation of a teacher who tried to do the right thing. Dale Pearson resigned from the school board. Frank Holloway was arrested for witness intimidation. Tyler Jenkins was charged as a juvenile with sexual assault. Alex should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt exhausted and wary. She knew how these situations worked. The powerful didn't just accept defeat. They regrouped and attacked from a different angle. She was proven right 2 days later. It was Saturday evening. Alex was at home, trying to catch up on grading papers and decompress from the week's chaos, when she heard glass breaking. Someone was trying to break into her house. Alex's SEAL training kicked in instantly. She moved silently through the house, grabbing her tactical flashlight from the hall closet and her phone from her pocket. She dialed 911 and whispered her address and situation, then set the phone down with the line open. She could hear 2 people, heavy footsteps, male voices trying to whisper but failing. She's gotta be here somewhere, trucks in the driveway. Alex recognized one voice, Frank Holloway. "Man, I don't know about this," the second voice said. "Breaking and entering, we're already in enough trouble." "Shut up, she ruined my life, she's going to pay." They were in her living room now. Alex was upstairs, positioned in the shadows at the top of the staircase where she could see them, but they couldn't see her. Holloway was drunk. She could hear it in his voice, see it in his unsteady movements. The second man was younger, maybe in his 20s. Both were large, both angry. Alex's tactical mind assessed the situation. 2 opponents, both bigger than her. One intoxicated and therefore unpredictable. Home invasion, clear threat. In her previous life, she would have neutralized them in seconds. Controlled violence, precise techniques, overwhelming force. She had the skills, she had the training. But she had sworn to leave that life behind. "Ms. Carter," Holloway shouted, "I know you're here. Come down and face me like a woman instead of hiding like a coward." The second man was rifling through her drawers, looking for valuables. "Frank, we should go. The cops are probably coming." "I don't care. She destroyed my family. My son is facing charges because of her lies." Alex could wait for the police, should wait for the police. That was the civilian way, the peaceful way. But Holloway was drunk and unstable. He might burn down her house. He might hurt someone, and the nearest police response was at least 10 minutes away in this rural area. She made her decision. Alex stepped out of the shadows at the top of the stairs. "Frank, you need to leave. The police are on their way." Holloway spun around, nearly losing his balance. "There you are. You think you're so smart. You think you can destroy people's lives and not face consequences. Your son destroyed his own life when he assaulted a 12-year-old girl. I just made sure he faced justice." "Justice?" Holloway started up the stairs, his face twisted with rage. "I'll show you justice." The second man grabbed Holloway's arm. "Frank, don't." Holloway shook him off and continued climbing the stairs toward Alex. This was it, the moment Alex had been avoiding for 2 years. The moment when her vow of nonviolence collided with the reality of an immediate physical threat. Alex had spent 2 years running from violence, but she was done running. "Mr. Holloway, this is your last warning. Stop where you are." "Or what? You gonna call for help? You gonna run? You're just a pathetic little teacher who thinks she's tough." He reached the top of the stairs, his hand reaching for Alex's arm. Alex moved. Years of SEAL training and muscle memory took over. She sidestepped his grasp, grabbed his extended arm, and used his own momentum and intoxication against him. One smooth motion, arm bar, hip throw, control. Holloway crashed to the floor, Alex's knee on his back, his arm locked in a position that would break if he struggled. "Don't move," she said calmly. The second man stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, staring in shock at his friend, immobilized by a woman half his size. "You have 2 choices," Alex said to him. "You can sit down and wait for the police like a smart person, or you can try to help your friend and end up just like him. What's it going to be?" The man slowly sat down on the couch, hands visible. Holloway struggled beneath her knee. "Let me go, you're assaulting me." "You broke into my home, I'm defending myself." Alex increased the pressure slightly on his arm. "But if you want, I can let you go and we can start over. Your choice." Holloway went still. They stayed like that for 8 minutes until the police arrived. Alex controlling Holloway with minimal force. The second man sitting quietly, both of them processing what had just happened. The responding officers were not Dan Fletcher. They were county sheriff's deputies who had no connection to the Holloway family. They took statements, arrested both men for burglary and attempted assault, and asked Alex to come to the station to complete a report. One of the deputies, a woman in her 30s, looked at Alex curiously. "Ma'am, that was some impressive self-defense. Where did you learn that?" Alex paused. She could deflect, make something up, maintain her cover. Or she could tell the truth. "I'm former Navy," she said simply. "I had training." The deputy nodded, accepting the explanation, not pushing for details. At the sheriff's station, Alex gave a complete statement. As she was finishing, a familiar face appeared, Commander Sarah Mitchell in civilian clothes. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "You called, I came." Sarah guided Alex to a quiet corner. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I didn't hurt anyone. Just controlled the situation until police arrived." I also heard you put a 200-pound man on the floor like he weighed nothing." Sarah studied her. "How do you feel about that?" Alex thought about the question. "I feel okay, actually. I didn't lose control. I didn't use more force than necessary. I didn't become the person I was afraid of becoming." "You used your skills to protect yourself. That's not the same as seeking out violence." "I know. I think I'm starting to understand that." Sarah handed her a card. "This is a lawyer, former JAG officer. She specializes in self-defense cases, just in case Holloway tries to press charges." "Thank you for coming all this way." "You're my friend, Alex, and you were one of my best operators. I wasn't going to leave you hanging." Sarah paused. "You know the press is going to dig into this. They're going to start asking questions about a teacher who can take down grown men like a trained fighter." "I know. Are you ready for your cover to be blown? For people to know you're a former SEAL?" Alex thought about the question. 2 years ago, the answer would have been no. She had needed anonymity, needed to separate herself completely from her military past. But now, after everything that had happened this week, "I think I'm tired of hiding," Alex said quietly. "I think I'm ready to be both things, the teacher and the veteran, the peaceful person and the warrior. Maybe they're not as incompatible as I thought." The story evolved over the next week. The local press reported on the home invasion. Then a curious reporter started digging into Alex's background and found the military service records. The story changed. Decorated Navy veteran defends home from intruder. Then someone, Alex suspected Sarah Mitchell, leaked more information. The story changed again. Former Navy SEAL working as teacher protects student and defends against retaliation. The national media picked it up. Within days, Alex's carefully maintained anonymity was gone. Her SEAL service was public knowledge. Reporters camped outside her house and the school. Dorothy Harrison called her on Sunday. "Alex, we need to talk about how to handle this." They met at a coffee shop on Monday morning. Dorothy slid a newspaper across the table. The headline read, "First female Navy SEAL teaches middle school after leaving elite unit." "Is it true?" Dorothy asked. "You were a Navy SEAL." "Yes." "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I wanted to leave that life behind. I wanted to be a teacher, not a veteran people gawked at." Dorothy was quiet for a moment. "Alex, the school board, the new interim board, wants to talk to you. They're not angry. Actually, they're in awe, but they want to understand why you hid this from us." "What do you want me to tell them?" "The truth, whatever that is." The meeting with the school board was scheduled for Wednesday evening. This time, the auditorium was packed, parents, teachers, students, and press. Alex stood at the podium and told her story. She talked about joining the Navy as a way to escape a difficult childhood, about working as a corpsman and then being selected for SEAL training, about the missions she could discuss and the ones she couldn't, about the toll that violence takes, even when it's necessary and justified. And she talked about why she left. "On my last mission, we were extracting a high-value target from a compound in Syria," she said quietly. "The mission went wrong. Civilians were in the compound, women and children who shouldn't have been there. We had to make split-second decisions. People died. Some of them were combatants, some of them weren't." The room was silent. "I did everything right according to my training. I followed the rules of engagement. I protected my team. We completed the mission." But after that night, I couldn't reconcile who I had become with who I wanted to be. I didn't want to be someone who solved problems with violence anymore. I wanted to help people in a different way. She paused, looking out at the faces watching her. So I became a teacher, and for 2 years I tried to pretend I had never been a SEAL. I tried to separate those two identities completely. But this week taught me that I can't do that. My experiences as a SEAL, the discipline, the strategic thinking, the commitment to protecting others, those things made me a better teacher. And my desire to teach and nurture, that doesn't make me weak or less capable. Helen Martinez, who had been appointed interim board chair, spoke up. Ms. Carter, no one here thinks you're weak. What we saw this week was someone who stood up for a student even when it cost her everything. Someone who used intelligence and courage instead of violence. Someone who, when forced to defend herself, showed remarkable restraint. That's exactly the kind of teacher we want in our schools. The board voted unanimously to offer Alex a new contract with a raise and an official apology for how she had been treated. But more importantly, something shifted in the community. Parents who had been cold were now respectful. Students looked at her with a new kind of admiration, not just as a teacher, but as someone who had served and sacrificed. Emma Rodriguez returned to school the following week. Tyler Jenkins was in juvenile detention awaiting trial. Frank Holloway was facing multiple charges. Dale Pearson had left town. On Emma's first day back, she appeared at Alex's classroom door after school. Ms. Carter, I wanted to thank you for not giving up on me, for protecting me even when it was hard. Alex smiled. That's what teachers do, Emma. We protect our students. Is it true what they're saying, that you were like a special forces soldier? I was a long time ago. Why did you become a teacher instead? Alex thought about the question, the same question everyone had been asking. Because teaching is another kind of service, she said finally. I used to protect people with weapons and tactics. Now I protect people with education and advocacy. Both are important. Both require courage. Do you miss it being a SEAL? Sometimes, but I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. After Emma left, Alex sat alone in her classroom, looking at the essays on courage her students had written. She picked up one and read it. It was Emma's essay. It began, "Real courage isn't about being the biggest or the strongest. It's about standing up for what's right even when everyone tells you to sit down. Real courage is my teacher, Ms. Carter, who could have used her skills to hurt people but chose to use them to protect people instead." Alex felt tears prick her eyes. That night she went home and opened the cabinet in her basement one more time. She looked at her SEAL trident, her medals, the photos of the warrior she used to be. But this time she didn't close the cabinet and lock it away. Instead, she brought the trident upstairs and mounted it on the wall of her home office, next to her teaching certificate. Two parts of the same person, the warrior and the teacher, the protector and the nurturer. Both necessary, both valuable, both her. Alex Carter had spent 2 years trying to leave her past behind, but she had learned that you can't outrun who you are. You can only choose how you use what you've become. She chose to use her strength to protect the vulnerable. She chose to use her discipline to inspire students. She chose to use her tactical mind to fight injustice through systems and truth. And she chose to use her SEAL training not to dominate, but to defend. The next morning, Alex arrived at school to find a note taped to her classroom door. It was from the girls' soccer team, the team she coached. "Coach Carter, we heard what happened. We always knew you were tough, but now we know you're a real warrior. We're proud to have you as our coach. Can you teach us some of those moves?" Alex laughed and shook her head. Then she wrote back, "I'll teach you something better, how to be strong without violence, how to protect without aggression, and how to stand up for what's right no matter who's standing against you. See you at practice." Because that was the real lesson. That was the real courage. And that was the real strength. Not the ability to put someone on the floor, though she could do that if necessary. But the wisdom to know when to fight and when to teach. When to strike and when to stand firm. When to be a warrior and when to be a teacher. And the understanding that sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is choose peace. But never, ever mistake peace for weakness. Frank Holloway had learned that lesson the hard way. And Alex Carter was just getting started teaching it.